금이 오른다고 세상이 다 오르는 건 아닙니다. 요즘 금값 정말 미쳤죠. 근데 이상하게도 실물 경제는 둔하고 주식시장도 제자리, 경기는 삐걱거려요. 이런 엇박자 역사적으로 딱 3번 있었습니다. 1929년, 1971년, 2000년. 전부 대전환 직전이었죠. 윌리 우가 이렇게 말했어요. 우린 지금 절벽의 가장자리 언더 EDG에 서 있다. 좀 섬뜩하죠? 근데 맞는 말이에요. 핵심들 쭉 짚어드릴게요. 첫째, 비즈니스 사이클의 균열이에요. 비트코인은 늘 2가지 리듬 위에서 움직였죠. 하나는 반감기, 즉 공급이 줄어드는 구조적인 쇼크. 또 하나는 4년짜리 유동성 사이클, 중앙은행이 돈을 풀고 거두는 흐름이죠. 그런데 이번엔 3번째, 실물 경제의 사이클이 겹쳐오고 있어요. 거시지표들이 한 목소리로 이상하다라고 말하는 중이에요. 둘째, 플라이트 투 세이프티의 역설이에요. 시장이 흔들리면 사람들은 제일 먼저 달러로 도망갑니다. 그때 금도 비트코인도 같이 눌려요. 2008년 금융위기 때처럼요. 하지만 유동성이 다시 풀리면 금은 먼저 튀고 이제는 기관이 들어온 비트코인이 다음 라운드를 준비하죠. 셋째, 가격보다 바닥 구조가 진짜 중요해요. 차트의 꼭대기는 감정이지만 바닥은 펀더멘털, 즉 본질이에요. 온체인 데이터에 나오는 실현가치 리얼라이즈드 캡, 그게 바로 장기 투자자의 자본 축적, 진짜 물길이에요. 단기 파도야 요란하지만 이 조류가 유지되면 구조는 멀쩡합니다. 넷째, 스토어 오브 밸류 결제, 이 순서예요. 라이트닝 네트워크 같은 결제 인프라, 아직 완벽하지 않아요. 99.9999% 신뢰성까지 가려면 멀었죠. 결국 가격이 먼저 신뢰를 만들고 그 다음에 인프라가 완성도를 올리는 겁니다. 그래서 지금은 기관, 국가급 참여가 네트워크의 내구성을 키워주는 핵심이에요. 그리고 마지막, 리스크 시나리오를 솔직하게 보자는 거예요. 시장이 한꺼번에 흔들리면 비트코인도 예외는 아니에요. 하지만 시야를 조금만 멀리 두면 답이 달라집니다. 단기엔 달러가 방패, 중장기엔 공급이 제한된 디지털 하드에셋, 즉 비트코인이 승자죠. 이제부터 진짜 숫자와 온체인 데이터로 이 시장의 물길, 즉 진짜 조류를 함께 해부해 봅시다. 이제 시작합니다.
What do you think will precipitate another bear market? Because at the moment we haven't really had any kind of euphoria in Bitcoin. It's just been, leg up consolidation 3 times over now since the bottom of the bear market. And so that, I guess, indicates to me that there isn't any kind of excessive exuberance, confidence, rather optimism about the future. And so I don't personally see a reason for the kind of bear markets that we've seen in the past. But how do you see that, and what do you think would precipitate the beginning of something like that?
I think that where we are in global macro, and people talk about the everything bubble. I think if that turns and the everything bubble pops, and the last time was 2008, before that was 2001, the dot-com crash, then everything will be stress tested. And I'm not saying just Bitcoin and crypto, I mean world financial markets. Liquidity is going to pull out of the system, buy-sided liquidity. No one will want to buy. They want to run to safety. It's called a flight to safety. Everyone runs to the US dollar, and then gold afterwards. You can see gold starting to rip, right? That's telling you warning bells on the economy.
It's been happening for almost 3 years now. So gold and Bitcoin bottomed around about the same time. I think gold may have preceded the Bitcoin bounce. Maybe they haven't at the same time. I can't quite remember. But they've been rising.
Yeah, because like gold's and it's in a divergence, and very seldom. It's a very, very, very seldom you see this kind of divergence with gold and the rest of the economy. And last time was the year 2000, before the dot-com crash. Before that was 1971, the stress test that created fiat. And before that was 1929.
So we're now seeing long lines of people outside of gold dealerships, or whatever they're called, to buy gold bullion.
Yeah.
Is that a top sign or signal? Because
we're
suddenly seeing quite a pullback, right?
Yeah, I think gold's going to cave as well, like it does in a flight to safety. If we have any structural sort of breaking of the TradFi markets. It'll be like 2008, a little bit like that, a bit like 2001. Well, 1929. Well, I don't think it'll be 1920. 1929 was the Great Depression, everybody. Right? The markets are quite different now, but that's what gold's telling you if you're a gold trader. So,
do you think gold will be impervious to?
No, it'll pull back. It'll pull back. Gold. I got my ass handed to me in 2008. I was long to the gills gold. It was the right bet, but you forget that when the whole thing unravels, everyone runs to the US dollar. They sell everything, unwind all their positions. It's called deleveraging. Dollar goes to the roof. In relative, the Dixie goes to the roof. Gold strength relative other markets. Dollar strength relative to other markets go through the roof, meaning that you can buy more with your dollar. And then, gold was the first to recover, and it went on all the way out to 2000 to the 3 to 4 year perpetual bull market. So, gold is the right asset in this time. And we want to see how Bitcoin performs. It's a really good test because now we've got institutions here and we've got global macro investors and traders in there. How does it perform? Is it going to perform like the NASDAQ or will it perform like gold? Because we say it's got the properties of gold. In my opinion, it's got more. It's what gold wanted to be, but it takes time. 16 years is not long enough.
So what do you think? Do you think there is a difference between a reaction to the crisis and a response after the crisis has emerged? And do you think that we'll see any kind of difference to what happens with Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is very liquid, so it's prone to being liquidated in a crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, like the 6 or 8 weeks afterwards.
Well, I just see Bitcoin as going into a normal standard bear market. Like everyone thinks it's strong, and it is. And the investors are strong, like institutional, MicroStrategy, these types of companies are holding it. So there's strength there. But if we get a pop in the global asset bubble, then that impact will pull it down, and that maybe we get a 80% drawdown like last time, and it's like just another 4-year cycle from the view of being inside Bitcoin. But from the view outside, it's a totally different thing. Look, it just did its normal thing against a stress test. So
80% from these levels would be catastrophic on the charts, though, right? It would look like the entire 16-year chart is breaking down. It would, because we're talking about going back down to 80% from here would be about $35,000.
If it holds above 16,000, the bottom of the next bear market is structurally intact because it's higher than the last bear market. And we shouldn't look at tops either. Tops are very unstable. The bottoms are very much closer to the fundamental investors. Generally, it doesn't drop below 20% of the capital stored in the network. It's very close. The tops are sometimes 3 to 5 times more than the capital in the network. So at the bottoms and how that performs, if it drops below 16,000, then that'd be a little bit freaky, But that can happen. It can rebound. Yeah.
You posted recently that Bitcoin has been operating thus far with 2 overlaid cycles, the Bitcoin cycle and then the broader monetary or macro cycle.
Yeah.
Where do you think we are at the moment with those 2? And do you think one is taking precedent over the other?
I talked about 3 cycles.
Okay, I missed that.
There's a halvening cycle, which is we all know the halvening, the supply shock. There's a 4-year liquidity cycle, which is central banks printing money on a 4-year cycle. And so that's been Bitcoin for 16 years. And then the last cycle was the business cycle. And Bitcoin was invented off the back of 2008 world financial crisis, which was the last ending of the last cycle. And those are the 3. And we've never seen the business cycle. And this is what I'm alluding to in this conversation. So,
where do you think we are in the business cycle?
On the verge.
On the verge of breaking down?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
The economic indicators have fired. Henrik Zeberg does a lot of this work, and I've seen his data and his signals, and it's very compelling. It's not just one. It's key macro indicators that all point to this. So the question is when, not if. And this was very clear to investors in 2007 as well. The indicators were clear. Gold was starting to rise. The numbers were looking bad. People were starting to put positions on banks. It wasn't a surprise, actually, to a lot of investors. It took the rest of the world by storm because everyone was sleeping at the wheel. The whole thing was over-leveraged.
I remembered 2008 and 9 market crashed through the property cycle in the United States. The market crashed in property as well. And it took some time before the policy response to the market crashes actually took effect. And from my recollection, it was something like an $800 billion bailout, which was such a fantastically enormous sum at the time that when they later asked Obama's advisor, how'd you guys arrive at that number? They said, we just picked a number that we thought would instill confidence. So I guess they didn't want to go to $1 trillion back then. And, the meme that Lynn Alden has been perpetuating, nothing stops this train. And so the assumption that what I guess all of us Bitcoiners have bought into was quite literally the policy response to a crisis will be the same. They will print out their way out of it. There is no other policy response that they will be brave enough to take. But between the time of recognition of a crisis, markets, which is what I was alluding to before, there'll be a market crash, and then it's the behavior within that period. And then there's the response, the policy response, and then the asset and market response to that. And I'm wondering, do you see a differential between how various assets will respond during that crash and then how they will respond to what we believe is an inevitable policy response of printing more money?
I don't understand the question, actually.
I'll ask it more simply. Do you think any assets will withstand a market crash in prices?
Yeah.
Which ones?
Fiat, US dollar, Swiss franc. I know this is not a maxi answer, but the reality is, because when we talk about Bitcoin, is the thing that's going to win out of this, we're talking over a period of 10 years. Short-term volatility was what it is. Like, what was it? It was like was it a 2-3 month pullback in gold and the flight to safety, everything unwinds. You got to wait for this whole thing. It's just like what happened a couple of weeks ago. Everything's dumping and then it bounces back and mean reverts. The smoke's cleared. It's still clearing. It takes 1 month to structurally repair that. And so, like, in the short term, if you want to do timing games, you be in dollars. And you try to buy the bottom, like buying the bottom of the COVID dip, But this will be slower, right? Because it's global macro. But nothing like the short term, the dollar, Swiss franc, these currencies that are considered safe, right? And then after that, buy whatever you want, whatever you understand, whatever you've done your research on. For me, it's Bitcoin because I've done the research on that.
Is the British pound a shitcoin?
Well, fiat is what would you call it? Yeah, fiat's a very interesting shitcoin. It's we call shitcoins going to zero, right? And of course that's inevitable because structurally they're designed to debase roughly 7% per year. But it's a very stable shitcoin, no volatility. So it's a shitcoin it's a shitcoin married with a stable coin. That's what fiat is, and that has use. That has use in these, because I'm not worried about this debasing to zero over the next 2 to 3 weeks, or next 3 months, or even the next year. I'm worried about the markets crashing 80% on me or 30%. Don't hold this, stablecoin shitcoin fiat. For the course of a decade. I mean, everyone knows that, but it's the time frames. I think that's the misunderstanding in most of the ecosystem is the time frames. Like when you said up and now it's down, well, the time frame, so just understand the time frames, and everything has its property, and Bitcoin's great for a long-term investment, not short-term. Short-term, if you're terminally ill and you're like 1 year to live, I would say fiat is the best store of value for you because the time frame's best suited for you. But if you're beginning your life, then that's different. You've got, what's the time horizon?
You're an investor and a trader, and one of the tools for people trading in the crypto Bitcoin space has been stable coins. I've never personally used them, but one of the things I'm really fascinated by is the transformation of Tether, the US dollar T, from chief Bitcoin FUD material for a lot of critiques of Bitcoin to suddenly just becoming the most dominant by a long margin, and just sort of taking over. There was an inflection point between Circle and Tether at one point, probably about 3 years ago, and they just went in completely opposite directions in terms of growth. And as someone who hasn't used it, I'm not an analyst either, I don't understand what happened. What precipitated that change in the direction for both stable coins, the Tether one and the Circle one?
I think Tether had a bad name because there was, I don't know if it was funded, but there was a handle on Twitter that was throwing FUD, unbased FUD at Tether. And there was the conspiracy theory that Tether was printing tokens, stable coins to buy Bitcoin because the AUMs moved together, the market caps were moving together. So, that had been going on for years and years and years. And I think 2022 was the acid test where all of the DeFi stuff started melting down. FTX started breaking. Everything started to break. And Tether proved it was good for the money.
They had a massive number of redemptions in a short space of time. And I remember Paolo live tweeting, no sweat, doing it no problem.
It was the biggest run on the bank in history. I think the next one was Wachovia Bank, and they went bust. They survived it, no problems. Because we know some of the team there, and we were like going to have a follow-up call, but it was like, I'm sorry, we can't do this because we're busy, all hands on deck doing redemptions, and no problems. I think one of the founders was like saying, I wish they would redeem back to zero so they know that we're good for the money. They're getting pretty tired of this bullshit. And so, they didn't redeem down to zero, but they got their chance to show that it's good. They got the stress test, and I think things started to build from there. The amount of stuff that they weathered to get to today, there was so much thrown against them. Accounts got shut down on them. Their bank, Deltec, really went on a limb to help them. To their detriment, actually. It was through their strong relationships that got them through. And so, hats off to them that they've ridden that journey and survived everything. And you don't get to that success just through a smooth road. I don't think any company does. And so they've gone through a hell of a road. And yeah.
You mentioned acid tests, and I think the 4-year cycles and the bear markets have been something that has almost acted as a stimulus for Bitcoin to become stronger through each bear market. But it's going to sound funny, but there's a kind of risk in a multi-year bull market for an accumulation of many, many risks swept under the rug until such time, kind of what happened to the US property market and global property markets in that respect. And then suddenly the tide sort of going out as well, because people just think, oh, the cycles are over. It's okay. We can take excessive risks. Yeah, we're just going to go on a multi-decade run here because of what we believe in Bitcoin eventually becoming. And you were alluding to before buying the tops with these treasury companies as well. And so if something played out similar to what happened with the gold ETF approval, where it just went on like a 10-year run and then almost a 10-year bear market, what happens to the Bitcoin ecosystem then?
Oh, I think it would be a good test, It's a long test, but, the people behind Bitcoin are pretty strong. I think the tourists will leave. The people who are, it'd probably be very healthy for the ecosystem, actually. It'd be very healthy, yeah.
You think a prolonged bear market would be healthy for the ecosystem?
For the Bitcoin, the network, not Bitcoin for the investor. We probably lose adoption, and we'd lose like decades of whatever. Adoption only happens when number goes up, typically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be catastrophic, like borderline critical, if we had almost a decades long bear market.
Yeah. You might be
Look,
right.
everyone's forgotten about gold until the last 2 weeks. Retail suddenly woke up. And it's only because sovereigns are buying, right? Sovereigns are buying for strategic reasons.
Yeah.
But
they've woken up because of the last few weeks of it, but they've been buying since last cycle.
So sovereigns have,
yeah,
sure, but retail has just woken up. And when I think about Bitcoin adoption, for sure, institutions are a part of that. But my heart is in retail adoption. I want retail consumers, citizens,
me too,
to invest. And I'm like, so when I think about it, I'm like, okay, there'll still be capital allocation from institutions, investors, traders, all that sort of thing. But I just think all that retail momentum will be sapped away. I don't think it can survive such a prolonged bear market. Like we lose so much momentum in just a 12 months drawdown, right? They don't come back for another 3.5 years after that.
I think you said it though, with gold, they've come back in over the last few weeks in gold. Bitcoin can go away for 10 years, and the hardcore Bitcoiners will be around. And I know a lot of Bitcoiners will be really happy to buy those Bitcoins, really like talking to Brad Mills the other day, right? He's like
irrepressible.
He's like, it's like, oh my God, Bitcoin at X price. Or rubbing his hands together. So what can I mortgage? So, we have a lot of people like Adam Bax put in a bid on Bitfinex or one of the exchanges to buy up all the available Bitcoins at
zero. 1 cent, 1 penny.
Yeah, something. And I think someone else, was it Whale Panda, said, I'll do 2 cents. I don't know, something like that. But all it'll take is for the price to run up again, and everyone will be back. I think it would survive 10 years. It would slow the adoption, for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to shut down my account too.
Yeah,
I'm not posting through a 10-year bear market.
No, no one's going to be watching anything about that. We'll just walk away for a while, and then it'll be back. It'll come back, The
Bitcoin archive has been archived. Willy Woo, thanks again. Interview number 3. We're very conscious of your time and want to respect that you've got other things to do as well. But it's always a pleasure to have you, and thank you for making yourself available again.
Absolutely, Archie. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, bro.